The fields were dry that morning, the sky the color of old steel. You could hear the wind dragging through the corn, the sound like paper being torn in half. The kind of morning that makes you feel the world is holding its breath. Inside the coffee pot hissed steady and familiar. Steam curled from the chipped white mug Linda used to love. I wrapped my hands around it, not for warmth, but for memory. The house smelled of dust and black coffee, and something else underneath something colder. Then came the knock, 3 times. Slow, deliberate. It wasn't a neighbor's knock. It wasn't a stranger's either. I froze halfway to the door. The walls seemed to close in every picture frame and floorboard, reminding me what silence can hold when it's kept too long. Through the glass, I could see the outline of a man waiting. Shoulders squared, posture steady as if he had been practicing this moment for years. I reached for the doorknob. My hand trembled just slightly, the way it does when you already know what waits on the other side, but still wish you were wrong. The wind pushed against the door as I opened it, carrying in the smell of soil and cold air. It brushed across my face like the ghost of something unfinished. And there he was, standing where the light cut across the porch. My own blood, my son looking at me the way strangers look when they have come to settle something they cannot forgive. The wind carried the smell of dry corn and cold soil, the kind that makes you realize autumn is nearly done pretending to be kind. I had just poured a second cup of coffee when someone knocked. It was a steady knock, not impatient, not timid, as if the man behind the door had practiced it the whole way up the path. When I opened the door, Ethan stood there. My son. 5 years had passed, but the shape of him was something I knew by heart. He looked older, sharper, too clean in a gray city suit that didn't belong to this part of Iowa. His hair was shorter, his face leaner, and his eyes had learned to hide what they once used to ask. I said his name. He smiled in that polite, uncertain way of a man who is no longer sure of his place. We didn't hug. I stepped aside and let him in. Inside the house was quiet enough to hear the clock in the kitchen marking each second. Ethan looked around, as if the walls still held something of him. His eyes stopped at the old wooden chair by the window. He brushed the dust from its back and sat down exactly as he used to when he was a boy. You kept everything the same, he said. Habit, I told him. At my age, change is just another word for losing something. He looked at the cup of coffee in my hand, then reached for the pot. Still 3 stirs clockwise before he drank, same as when he was 12 and nervous before school. That small motion caught me off guard. For a moment, the air felt almost normal. He told me about Chicago, about a non-profit working with veterans after COVID. He said they helped men get back on their feet, find jobs, reconnect with their families. It sounded good, almost noble. His tone was steady, rehearsed, like someone who had learned to explain himself often. That's good work, I said. He nodded, but his eyes dropped to the table when I asked how the funding worked. He said something about grants and donors, his voice a little too quick. On the counter, Linda's old clock was ticking. The brass gleamed brighter than I remembered. Ethan followed my gaze and smiled. I had it restored, he said. The craftsman did a perfect job. I looked closer. The small scratch along the rim, the one Linda made the day she dropped it, while laughing too hard at one of my stories, was gone. The clock looked perfect, but it wasn't hers. You kept the rhythm, though, I said quietly. He nodded, pleased not hearing the rest of what I meant. We talked about small things, the weather, his apartment, the way the city never really sleeps. He asked how I'd been managing the house. I told him I was fine, that the place took care of itself. He smiled again, but I could tell he was working towards something. After a pause, he reached into his leather briefcase. and laid a folder on the table. The paper was thick, neatly clipped, the kind used in offices where things always look under control. On the cover, embossed in blue, were the words, Halford Community Trust. I raised an eyebrow. What's this? A small foundation. Darted, he said. I wanted to do something in our name. You're part of it too, Dad. He opened the folder and pointed to a form. It was a power of attorney document, typed clean legal language spaces for signatures, a blank for a notary. This is just to make sure everything's in order, he explained. Helps with taxes and keeps the assets protected. Standard stuff. He said it casually, almost kindly, as if he were offering to help carry groceries. I looked at the paper for a long moment. The language was careful. Too careful. You've thought this through, I said. He leaned back, confident. That's what I do now, Dad. I think ahead. Your mother used to say thinking ahead was the fastest way to ruin a surprise. He smiled faintly. Mom liked surprises. For a few seconds, we let her name hang between us. The air shifted. I could see in his eyes that he missed her, but not enough to stay longer in the silence that followed. He gathered the papers, straightened the folder, and placed it neatly on the table. Take a look when you can. No rush, he said, standing. You came all this way just to drop this off. He hesitated. No, I came because it was time. He reached for his coat. I walked him to the door. He paused, once glanced back at the house, at the chair, the clock, the dust in the corners. You look good, Dad. Older, but good. That's the nicest lie I've heard in a while. He laughed, the sound brittle, then stepped out into the cold. The gravel cracked under his shoes until the sound faded into the distance. I closed the door and stood there for a while. The house felt different now, as if his leaving had stirred the dust into new shapes. I went back to the kitchen. The folder sat where he left it, quiet and harmless on the table. I didn't touch it. Instead, I looked at the clock. Its ticking filled the room, steady and precise. It didn't sound like Linda's. Hers used to skip a little soft and human, as if the seconds needed to breathe. This one ticked perfectly, almost proud of its flawlessness. I reached for the phone and called Raymond Cole. His number was still pinned to the fridge under a magnet shaped like a wheat stalk. He answered on the second ring, his voice as calm as it was 5 years ago when he handled Linda's will. John, how are you holding up? Not sure I said. Ethan came by. He's back. That's good news. Maybe. He brought papers, power of attorney, said it was to help manage things. There was a pause long enough for me to hear him light a cigarette. Send it over. Don't sign a damn thing until I've read it. You think there's a catch? He exhaled smoke into the line. I think protection always comes with a fine print. I promised to fax it in the morning. We said goodnight. The kitchen was still warm from the coffee, but the rest of the house felt colder. I sat by the window. Outside, the trees were bare, their branches dark against the last bit of light. The air smelled like burnt leaves and distant rain. Somewhere down the road, a car passed headlights gliding across the front yard. For a second, I thought Ethan might turn around, walk back, tell me what he really came for. But the road stayed empty. I leaned back, listening. The clock kept its rhythm sharp and relentless. I closed my eyes, but the sound stayed with me, each tick a small reminder that something had shifted, something I couldn't name yet. Maybe that was what forgiveness really was. Not peace, not comfort. Just a pause before the next mistake. The morning light came through the blinds, thin and colorless. The coffee pot gurgled behind me, slow and tired, like the house itself. I hadn't slept well. The ticking from that new clock kept slipping into my dreams, blending with voices I didn't want to remember. A car rolled up the gravel road. I knew the sound before I looked. Ethan's sedan, same as last night, only the engine idled longer, like he was deciding whether to turn back. He didn't. When he knocked, I opened the door and found him smiling. He looked rested, confident, his hair still damp from a shower. Beside him stood a woman in a gray blazer holding a black folder. "This is Carla," he said. "She's a notary, helps with the official stuff." I stepped back. The smell of rain came in with them. The kitchen filled too quickly. Carla was polite, quiet, setting her folder down on the table, as if it were a ritual she'd done 100 times. I watched her lay out the papers in careful order. Ethan stayed standing for a while, hands in his pockets, then took the seat across from me. He nodded toward the documents. "Just a few forms, Dad. Nothing complicated. Makes everything easier. Taxes, health proxies, you name it. I'll help keep things organized if anything happens." I picked up the top page. Power of Attorney. The letters looked harmless, printed in neat black ink. He poured coffee for both of us and sat down again. For a moment he said nothing. He stared out the window toward the fields. "Mom would have hated all this paperwork," he said softly. "She used to make fun of me for how much I liked structure." That was true. Linda always said Ethan was born 30 years old. He looked down at the papers again. "Guess that's one thing I got from her. The part that wants things right, clean, simple." It was a small thing to say, but it loosened something in me. For a moment, he sounded like my son again. Carla adjusted her glasses, waiting. I kept reading. "Limited to asset management, revocable at any time." Nothing jumped out. Legal phrases arranged to sound comforting. Ethan leaned forward, voice lower now. "This is just to protect you, Dad. I'm not taking anything. It's all still yours." I studied his face. It was a good face, steady, familiar, the kind a man builds when he wants to be trusted. I signed. Carla pressed the seal against the page, the stamp cracking through the silence. The wax ring it left behind caught the morning light, a dull red circle that looked like dried blood. She gathered her papers, smiled, thanked us both, and left. Ethan saw her to the car. When he came back, he stopped near the doorway, as if he wasn't sure whether to sit again or leave for good. Then he walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. "Now I can really help you, Dad." His voice broke on the word help. I nodded. He hugged me before he left, a brief, hard squeeze. I wanted to believe that was what forgiveness felt like. After he drove away, I poured another cup of coffee and sat at the table. The cup trembled slightly in my hand. The smell of ink still lingered in the air. For the first time in months, I caught myself humming while rinsing the mug. It startled me. I couldn't remember the last time I'd done that. Maybe it meant something was shifting finally. Maybe it meant I could rest. 3 days later, the letter came. It was in the afternoon, while the sunlight cut through the blinds in long gray lines. The envelope bore the seal of the county recorder. The paper was thick, the kind used for things that can't be undone. It confirmed that a new ownership record had been filed for my property. I stared at the words, reading them 3 times, certain I was misinterpreting something. Then the phone rang. It was the bank manager, a young man with a cheerful tone that didn't fit what he was saying. He wanted to verify a new co-owner on the mortgage, Ethan's name. He said it like it was a favor, like he was congratulating me on a business partnership. When I hung up, the house was silent again. I folded the letter twice, then tore it clean down the middle. The sound was too soft to feel like anger. I went outside. The air was cool, sharp, with the smell of cut grass from a neighbor's yard. Across the road, the fields had gone pale under the autumn sun. Everything looked exactly the same, which somehow made it worse. By dusk, I found myself dialing Raymond's number. He answered on the second ring. "John, what happened?" I told him. "The notary, the papers, the bank. Call the letter." He listened without interrupting. Then he spoke slowly. "Under a valid power of attorney, your son can file a joint tenancy if the document's language allows. It's perfectly legal. I can undo it." "Not easily," he said. "But I'll look into it. Get a certified copy from the recorder's office. I'll call you after I've read it." I hung up and sat in the dark kitchen phone still in my hand. The hum of the line lingered even after I set it down. Later that evening, I drove into town. The streets were nearly empty. I parked outside the same diner where I used to take Ethan on Saturdays when he was little. The neon sign flickered faintly against the glass. I ordered black coffee. The waitress, older now, but still kind, asked about my family. I said they were fine. She smiled like she believed it. At the window, a young couple sat close, sharing a slice of pie. The man reached to wipe cream from the woman's lip. The motion was so simple, so familiar, that I had to look away. When I got home, the house felt too still. I turned on the porch light and caught sight of the brass clock through the window. Its ticking carried even from there. Inside, I picked up the pen still lying on the table. A blue stain darkened my thumb where the ink had dried. I pressed it against the paper and left a faint mark, a ghost of a signature I didn't mean to give. When a man says he forgives you, I thought, don't trust the smile. Watch where the ink goes and what the stamps approve. Outside, the night was silent, except for the faint hum of the wind against the house. Behind me, the clock ticked on each second, falling with perfect precision. It sounded almost like a heart-steady patient, and far less forgiving. The night had been long. I hadn't slept much since the call from the bank. The sound of the clock in the living room had become too precise, too confident. It marked every second like a verdict. By morning, I had made up my mind. I called Ethan. He answered quickly, his tone calm, even warm. He said we should talk face to face, somewhere quiet. The little coffee shop downtown was his suggestion. When I walked in, the smell of roasted beans and maple syrup filled the air. The place hadn't changed. The old booths were still lined against the wall, the same worn counter where Linda used to rest her purse while she waited for her latte. I caught myself glancing at that spot before I looked for him. Ethan was already there by the window. He stood when he saw me, adjusted his gray suit, and smiled like we were two businessmen meeting for lunch, not a father and son, about to settle a debt that words couldn't touch. "You look well," he said. I sat down. The waitress brought water without asking. Ethan ordered for both of us black, for me 2 sugars for him. He remembered. That detail almost softened something in me, almost. We sat in silence. Rain started to fall again outside, tracing slow rivers on the glass. I finally spoke. "You said we needed to talk." He nodded. "About the property, about the trust. It's nothing personal, Dad. It's just paperwork that needed to be fixed." Fixed. The word hung there heavy and deliberate. "You call it fixing. I call it taking back control," I said. He didn't flinch. "I'm just organizing what should have been organized a long time ago. You built everything by yourself and left no plan for anyone else. I'm doing what's responsible. Organizing doesn't mean erasing ownership," I said. He smiled, polite and empty. "Someone has to take care of things when you're gone." Gone? The word hit harder than I expected. He said it like a fact, not an insult. I saw myself reflected in his eyes, smaller, slower, less certain. "You really think forgiveness means taking what isn't yours?" I asked. He looked out the window, watching a couple hurry across the street under a single umbrella. "You talk about ownership like it's moral," he said. It's just paperwork. Everything we own is temporary." He took a sip of coffee calm, as if he'd rehearsed this. His tone was even, but his fingers trembled slightly on the cup. For a moment I saw something unguarded, a flicker of doubt, or maybe guilt. "Mom would have handled this differently," he said quietly. That caught me. "How so?" "She wouldn't have waited this long." He didn't look at me when he said it. A silence settled between us, thick and old. It wasn't anger that filled it, but something heavier, inheritance, maybe the kind no lawyer can divide. He checked his watch, slipped his phone back into his pocket, and reached for his briefcase. When he stood, the latch came undone. Papers slid out across the table and onto the floor. I bent to help, but he was already gathering them fast. One sheet caught my eye. A list of names neatly printed with the heading, "Private Trust Beneficiaries." My eyes scanned down before I could stop them. One name froze me in place. Claire Halford. I looked up. He met my gaze, and for the first time that morning his expression cracked. He reached out, quickly pulled the paper from my hand and tucked it back into the folder. His voice was low. "Old documents, nothing that matters." But the lie was too clean, too smooth. He closed the briefcase, tightened his coat, and placed a $20 bill on the table. "We'll talk again," he said, "when things are settled." I watched him leave. His reflection moved across the rain-streaked glass until it disappeared into the gray outside. The coffee had gone cold. The smell of wet asphalt drifted in through the open door. I sat there, the name echoing through me like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. Claire Halford. I hadn't spoken it in 3 decades. Not since Kansas, not since before Linda and I were married. The waitress came by to clear the cups. She smiled gently, said I looked tired. I nodded, left cash on the table, and walked out. The rain had stopped, but the sky hung low and heavy. I drove out of town past the edge of the cornfields. The stalks were dry now, brittle from the cold. Wind moved through them in slow waves, whispering against the truck windows. I pulled over by the side of the road and killed the engine. The ticking from the dashboard clock filled the silence. I called Raymond. He answered on the second ring. "You remember that old file?" I asked. "Before Linda." He didn't speak for several seconds. Then his voice came quiet and measured. "Yes, John. I remember." "Ethan knows," I said. "How much?" "Enough." He sighed. "Then be ready. He'll use that truth carefully. He's your son, after all." I ended the call and sat there for a long time. The clouds hung close to the ground, pale and heavy like smoke. I thought of Claire, of her mother's eyes, of the one mistake that had never stayed buried. I started the truck again, drove home slow. The house waited still and small under the last light of day. Inside, I set my phone on the table beside the folder from the county. The ink on my thumb had faded, but a faint stain remained, a trace of something I couldn't undo. I poured a glass of bourbon, just one. The first sip burned, the second didn't. When I looked up, the clock was there on the wall, ticking steady. The sound wasn't loud, but it filled the room like a quiet warning. Truth doesn't care how ready you are. It comes when it wants, carrying every name you thought you'd buried. The second hand moved once more, a clean, sharp click in the stillness marking the moment when the past finally began to breathe again. The house was quiet, except for the clock, steady and indifferent. The evening light had already given up. What was left came from the lamp above the kitchen table, soft and tired. I heard tires on gravel, a slow roll, then the car door closing. Raymond never honked. He just arrived. He stepped inside without a word. His coat smelled faintly of cold air and engine grease. He nodded at me once, the kind of nod men give when there are no greetings left to say. His briefcase hit the table with a heavy sound, and he began to sort through the papers in calm, deliberate motions. He didn't need to explain. The top page already told me what I didn't want to know. Under my power of attorney, Ethan had filed for joint ownership. Then the next page, a quitclaim deed transferring his share to someone else. The name was printed clear and unshaken. Claire Halford. I read it twice before I spoke. Kansas. Raymond gave a slow nod. He looked older under this light lines deep in his face. "You remember her," I said. He exhaled through his nose. "You told me once, years ago. I thought it was just a confession you needed to let out. I didn't think it would come back like this." Neither did I. I reached for the phone. My hand moved before my mind could catch up. Ethan picked up on the second ring. His voice was calm, as if he'd been expecting this call. "You did this." "I returned what you took." "You could have come to me. You never came to her." The line went quiet. I could hear the city breathing behind him, the hum of traffic, a voice on a loudspeaker somewhere far away. "Why now?" I asked. He said, "Because I wanted you to understand what being left behind feels like." He hung up before I could answer. I set the phone down slowly. Raymond was still standing. His eyes had softened, but his shoulders were square. If I sue, do I win? He took off his hat, rubbed his forehead, and set it on the table. "Maybe. Legally, you've got a case. But it will drag, and it will stain. Mud sticks even when you win." I looked at the wedding photo on the wall. Linda's eyes were still bright in that picture, caught in a time before regret learned our names. "Justice isn't a sword," I said. "It's a scale, and my side's been heavy for a long time." Raymond sat down across from me, an uncommon gesture. His hand brushed my shoulder as he reached for the pen. It was nothing a small touch, but it felt like a human reminder that I wasn't already a ghost. He laid out the injunction paperwork. "We can hold the transfer for now. It won't undo what's been done, but it stops the ground from moving until the court decides which way it tilts." I signed without hesitation. My handwriting looked foreign on the line. Raymond gathered the papers, tapped them into a neat pile, and slipped them into his briefcase. He stood and looked around the room. "You should eat something, John." Then he smiled faintly, the way a friend does when advice is useless but still necessary. "I'll take care of it first thing in the morning." He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "You did the right thing filing the injunction," he said. Then, after a long breath, he added, "But maybe don't call it justice just yet." When the door closed, I stood alone again. The air in the house felt heavier, not with anger, but with the weight of names that never fade. I walked to the window. The porch light barely reached the yard. A moth fluttered against the glass, frantic, searching for a way through the illusion. I watched it beat itself quiet. The phone buzzed once. A message from an unknown number. "Claire will be safe." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The house creaked as I moved down the hallway. The cedar closet at the end still held the scent of winter. I reached in and brushed my hand against Linda's old coat. The wool was soft from years of use. Behind it, a small box waited where I'd left it decades ago. Inside were the remains of a younger man's mistakes. A postcard, yellowed at the edges. A photograph of a child standing beside a car too big for her. On the back, a message written in a woman's hand I had tried to forget. "We are fine. Don't come." I stared at the words until the letters lost meaning. Then I put the postcard back and closed the lid. It didn't ease the guilt. It never did. It only put the past back behind wood and air. In the kitchen, I poured myself a drink and sat in Linda's chair. The bourbon burned the first sip, then settled warm in my chest. The clock ticked, filling the quiet with something that felt like order. Outside, a train wailed across the fields, a sound both near and distant. Raymond's headlights flickered once through the window as he turned down the main road. For a moment, I felt less alone. I looked at the injunction form folded neatly on the table. It was not a weapon. It was a pause. A way to let truth stand up on its own before the next blow came. I walked over to the clock and placed my hand on the brass frame. The glass was cool. The tick inside kept its perfect rhythm, but for once I wished it would falter just once so I'd know it still belonged to me. Instead, I reached up and stopped it. The second hand froze, suspended between moments. The silence that followed was clean. I turned off the lamp, leaving only the soft light from the window. The night outside moved like a slow tide, steady and patient. I sat there watching it breathe, waiting for morning to decide what to do with the truth that was now awake. The courthouse smelled of dust and air conditioning, that strange mix of old paper and recycled air. Morning light filtered through tall windows, pale and cold, flattening every face it touched. I walked in with Raymond beside me. Neither of us spoke. Words had become too expensive. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with low voices, the scraping of chairs, the shuffle of documents being set in neat piles. Reporters filled the back rows, their cameras resting like vultures waiting for movement. Ethan sat near the front, back, straight suit, pressed eyes fixed on the table. He looked older than I remembered, not by years, but by something heavier. The judge entered, and the room fell into that quiet, reserved only for moments when truth has no place to hide. Ethan's attorney went first. His voice was sharp, each word measured and clean. The power of attorney was valid, the signatures verified the filings proper. He placed a DNA report on the table, stating that Claire Halford was the biological daughter of the respondent. The court accepted it into record. Then Raymond stood. He adjusted his glasses, glanced once at me, and spoke with a voice that could steady a room. The power of attorney authorized management and protection of assets, not the redistribution of ownership. He asked the court to recognize the misuse not as fraud, but as a moral breach that the law could still name. The judge listened, pen tapping lightly against the desk. When they called Ethan to the stand, the room shifted again. He took the oath and sat down, his movements deliberate, his face unreadable. He said he didn't want the money, only what was right. His tone was calm, and his eyes stayed on the judge, never on me. There was something in his posture that caught me, the way he rested one hand on the witness rail. It was Linda's habit when she was nervous. I had never seen him do it before. For a moment, I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. When it was my turn, I rose slowly. My knees protested, but pride kept me steady. I took the oath and sat. The microphone hummed faintly. I told the truth. About Kansas. About the girl I left behind because I was too weak to do otherwise. I said her name out loud for the first time in 30 years. I told them about Linda, how I'd tried to build a good life out of a dishonest foundation. I said that Ethan wasn't wrong to expose what I buried. He just forgot that justice and resentment look the same when you hold them too tightly. The courtroom was silent. Somewhere in the back, someone coughed, and the sound felt human again. The attorney asked if I regretted what I'd done. Every day, I said. But regret isn't ownership. Ownership is standing in the mess you made without blaming the weather for the rain. Ethan looked at me then, finally. His eyes didn't accuse me anymore. They just searched like he was trying to understand the man who had built both his world and his wounds. When the recess was called, I stepped outside into the hallway. The air was cooler there, quieter. I leaned against the wall near the window. The light coming through was thin dust spinning inside it. Ethan walked past with his lawyer heading toward the lobby. For half a second, he slowed. His hand brushed against mine just barely, as if by accident. He didn't look back, but it was enough. The kind of contact only blood could make without permission. Raymond joined me by the window. His tie was crooked again. He asked if I was ready for the verdict. "Withdraw the full injunction," I said. "Keep the temporary one until the transition is formal. I'm not here to win." He nodded. His eyes softened, and his voice dropped low. "You did what few men have the courage to do, John. You didn't fight back when the truth finally caught you." We walked outside. The courthouse doors opened into a storm of flashbulbs. Reporters shouted questions, their words scattering through the cold air. I shielded my eyes. For a moment I saw Ethan again at the bottom of the steps. Claire stood beside him. She wasn't holding a grudge. She was holding him steady. Raymond said we could slip through the side exit. I shook my head. No. Let them see. Sometimes losing needs to be seen so it counts. The cameras flashed again. In one of those bursts of light, I caught my reflection in a reporter's lens. A man stripped down to truth, nothing more, to defend, nothing left to hide. Raymond's car was waiting at the curb. He opened the door for me, but before getting in, I turned back toward the courthouse. The flag above it moved in the wind, slow and stubborn. I didn't say goodbye to Ethan. Some things don't need words to end. The ride back to the edge of town was quiet. The fields stretched out bare and endless brown and gold under the weak sun. The horizon looked the same as it always had, but I felt something lighter in the distance, like air after a long storm. When we reached my street, Raymond stopped the car. He looked at me, uncertain whether to say more. Then he simply said, "Go home, John. You did right by the truth." I got out the gravel crunching under my shoes. The air smelled of rain that hadn't fallen yet. Inside the house, I stood by the window. The clock on the wall had started ticking again, soft and patient. I hadn't remembered winding it. Maybe I had, maybe time had forgiven me enough to start moving on its own. I watched the second hand make its way around, slow but certain. Each click felt less like judgment and more like permission. Outside, a train passed in the distance, its horn low and drawn out across the fields. The sound folded into the quiet, steady, and human. For the first time in years, I felt the strange peace of losing something properly. And in that silence, I knew I hadn't lost myself. The rain stopped some time before dawn, leaving behind that quiet hum of dripping gutters and soaked soil. I sat by the window watching the light crawl across the fields. Everything looked washed clean, though nothing really was. The clock on the wall kept its steady rhythm soft but certain, like it had outlasted every argument I'd ever made. A few weeks passed. The courthouse felt like a different lifetime. I read in the paper that Ethan had left for Europe, working for the nonprofit's branch overseas. There was a short mention of him in the local news, no photograph, just a few lines about international outreach and recovery programs. Raymond had dropped the paper off one morning, folded neatly beside the coffee pot. He didn't comment, but his eyes told me he knew I'd already heard. Not long after the rumors came, the foundation under audit, the board being questioned about missing funds. Small-town gossip travels fast, especially when it smells like scandal. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. Fatigue had settled into me in a way that even anger couldn't dislodge. One gray afternoon, Claire called. Her voice was careful, the kind that holds back more than it says. She wanted to meet at the town library. When I arrived, the sky was hanging low, the kind of winter light that never fully commits to being day. The library smelled of paper and dust, faint traces of coffee, and old heating vents. Claire sat near the window, her hair tied back, posture straight, but uncertain. A single cup of coffee steamed beside her. She stood when she saw me. We both hesitated. It wasn't awkwardness, more like two people measuring how much history could fit between them. Ethan asked me to return the house, she said. He thinks it doesn't belong to me. I took a breath, steady but slow. Keep it. Let it stand as his apology. Her eyes filled, though she didn't cry. There was strength in her restraint, a quiet dignity that reminded me of Linda. I hadn't expected that. For a brief second, I saw in her the years I'd missed, the birthdays, the small joys, the losses I hadn't even known enough to grieve. She reached across the table and touched my hand barely. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly. It was recognition, a fragile bridge built from silence and time. After she left, I sat there for a while, listening to the faint turning of pages from the back of the library. Outside, a group of kids ran through puddles, their laughter echoing against the walls. Life has a way of going on even when you don't give it permission. Around town, people treated me differently. Some nodded when I passed. A few shook my hand a little too firmly. Others crossed the street to avoid meeting my eyes. That's how forgiveness works in the Midwest. It's quiet, conditional, and always half-finished. Raymond came by often. He carried the weight of decency the way other men carry coats worn and familiar. One evening, as he sat at my kitchen table, sorting through the last of the property documents, I asked if it ever got easier untangling the wreckage people make of their lives. He smiled faintly, adjusting his glasses. Honor, he said, isn't about being clean. It's about doing shameful things the right way. I didn't respond. I just watched him gather the papers, aligning the edges carefully. There was something steady about him, something that reminded me how rare it is to find a man who still believes decency can hold a line. After he left, I opened the drawer where the fake clock sat. The brass frame still gleamed perfectly. I ran my thumb along its smooth edge, remembering how Ethan had said he'd fixed it. The real clock, Linda's, was still on the wall, ticking unevenly, but alive. I took the fake one and placed it at the bottom of the drawer. I didn't need it anymore. Sometimes truth doesn't fix things. It just makes them bearable. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee gone cold. The air smelled of wet earth and cedar. A pickup drove by its headlights, gliding across the mailbox before disappearing down the hill. Across the street, Mrs. Hanley was watering her garden in the dark, her hose arcing under the yellow porch light. The world keeps itself busy, I thought, even when you stop moving. I wrote a letter to Ethan that night. It wasn't long. I told him that responsibility isn't something passed through blood. It's learned by example. And the worst example I gave him was silence. I signed it, but didn't seal it. Some words aren't meant to travel. They only need to exist. I tucked the letter between the pages of my old notebook, the one Linda used to tease me about never finishing. The next morning, Raymond called. His voice was lighter. Everything's filed, he said. It's done. Rest, John. Rest isn't something you choose, I told him. It's something that arrives when you finally stop defending yourself. After he hung up, I walked outside. The sun was just rising over the fields. The grass shimmered with dew bending under its own brightness. A train's horn carried across the plains low and distant. Inside the house felt smaller, but clean. The papers were gone, the surfaces clear. On the wall, Linda's clock ticked unevenly, but steady. The sound wasn't perfect, but it was real. I looked out the window one last time before making breakfast. The sky was pale and thin, like it hadn't decided yet what kind of day it would be. Then the phone rang once, soft and brief, before going silent again. No message. No number I recognized. I didn't call back. I just stood there listening to the rain beginning again on the roof, soft and patient like it had all the time in the world. The first sound I heard that morning was the clock. Its ticking was steady, alive. The kind of sound you stop noticing until one day it reminds you that time has been moving even when you haven't. It had been a year since Iowa. I'd sold the old house, left the fields, and that narrow road where winter always came too early. The cabin by Lake Michigan was small, the kind of place Linda used to circle in real estate magazines and say we'd move to someday. I never thought I would keep that promise alone. The air here had a different weight. Mornings came with fog that clung to the pines, afternoons with gold light spilling across the water. Sometimes in that half-silence before dawn, I almost heard Linda's voice humming the same tune she used to when she cooked. I'd turn expecting her, but there would be only the lake patient, and wide. I spent my days quietly, coffee, a walk to the dock, sometimes a word, with the fishermen who came before sunrise. There was an old man named Joe who kept a boat tied nearby. He talked about the weather more than anything else. We shared silence better than conversation. In June, a small package arrived from Europe. The wrapping was careful, almost reverent. I knew the handwriting before I even looked at the name. Ethan. Inside was the clock, the real one. The same scratch along the brass rim that Linda once called its birthmark. There was a note short, written in the same uneven way he used to sign school papers. I repaired it myself this time. E. I held the clock for a long time, the cool metal against my palm. Then I wound it gently, and the hands began to move again. The sound was slow, imperfect, human. I placed it on the wall above the small kitchen table. It fit there, as if it had always belonged. A week later, Raymond came to visit. His car tires crunched over the gravel drive, his old hat pulled low. He moved slower now, careful with every step, but his voice carried the same calm weight. He brought a bottle of rye and 2 glasses. We sat on the porch, facing the lake. The sky was a deep summer blue, soft at the edges. Raymond poured his hands steady despite the years. Ethan left everything to Claire, he said. The trust, the remaining accounts. And he started a scholarship in Linda's name, for veterans' children. No headlines, no speeches, just action. I let the words sit between us. The waves lapped against the shore, small and even. He's trying. Raymond added, his voice quiet. I nodded. Maybe that's all a man can do. Try. We sat there until the light began to fade. Raymond told me about the people in town, the changes, the new families moving in. His stories blended with the sound of water against the dock. Before he left, he looked at me for a moment, as if to measure something he didn't need to say. Don't let the quiet fool you, John. You've earned it. After his truck disappeared down the road, I stayed on the porch. The lake shimmered with the last of the sun. I thought of Linda, of the mornings she'd sit by the window waiting for me to come home from the factory. I remembered the smell of her hair, the way her laughter could soften even the sharpest days. I spoke softly into the air. "You'd have liked this place, Lynn. You'd have said the water sounds like forgiveness." The wind shifted cool and light. Somewhere across the water, a bell from a fishing buoy rang once clear and small. Inside, I took out my old notebook. The letter to Ethan was still there, folded neatly between the pages. I added a line below it. "A man isn't measured by what he keeps, but by what he lets go, so what's right can take its place." I closed the notebook and slipped it under the clock. The ticking filled the room again, soft, but certain, a reminder that time forgives the stubborn as much as the repentant. The night was warm enough to sleep with the window open. I lay awake for a while, listening to the waves. Then, somewhere in the distance, the phone rang once, short and low, before stopping. I sat up, waiting. No second ring. I didn't call back. Some things don't need answers right away. Maybe it was Ethan. Maybe it wasn't. The next morning, the sun came up slow and full. The air smelled of pine and lake water. A small boat drifted past the dock, its motor humming softly. I watched it until it disappeared into the mist. The clock kept ticking inside, marking no deadlines, no losses, only time, patient and forgiving. And for the first time in years, I didn't count the hours. I just let them happen. The fog lifted slow that morning, leaving a thin shimmer over the lake. The air carried the scent of pine and cold water, sharp enough to wake even the tired corners of my mind. I poured coffee and stood by the window, watching a lone gull trace the horizon until it disappeared into the light. The clock ticked behind me, steady and sure. By afternoon, the day had turned quiet. October sunlight spilled across the porch, the kind that softens everything it touches. I heard the sound of tires on gravel, then a car door closing. Footsteps moved toward the cabin, deliberate and unhurried. A gentle knock followed. When I opened the door, Claire stood there. Her coat pulled close, a strand of hair caught in the wind. She held an envelope pale and creased at the edges. Her eyes carried something calm, as if the storm that once lived behind them had finally found somewhere to rest. "He wanted you to have this," she said, her voice almost a whisper. I stepped aside, and she came in. The air she brought with her felt colder than the room. We sat at the table under the clock. I turned the envelope in my hands, tracing the familiar handwriting. It was his, Ethan's, the same uneven script that once signed his permission slips and college applications. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The words were short, written in that same uncertain way he used when he was trying to say something honest. He said he had forgiven me. Not for me, but for himself. He said he was tired of trying to win against the past, that he wanted to let it rest. I read it again slower this time. The page trembled a little, though maybe it was just my hands. The air seemed to thin around me. For years I had imagined what his forgiveness might sound like: a confrontation, a shouting match, or maybe silence. I never thought it would come folded inside an envelope carried across an ocean. When I looked up, Claire was watching the water through the window. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The light from the lake touched her face, and for a moment I saw a trace of Linda there, not in her features but in the stillness. We sat without words. I could hear the faint hum of the clock, the rhythm of something that had learned to move on. Claire began to talk, then her voice even almost shy. She spoke of Kansas, of summers that smelled like wheat and soil, of long bus rides, and the quiet kindness of her aunt. She talked about learning to live without bitterness. Her voice was soft, but sure, carrying a strength that didn't need to prove itself. I asked if she had spoken to him lately. She said once, months ago, a postcard from Lisbon. He sounded at peace, she said, like a man who finally stopped running. She smiled a little when she said it. I could tell she believed him. The lake shifted under the wind, light breaking in silver lines across the surface. I turned to the clock and saw that the minute hand had stopped. I stood, reached up, and adjusted it slightly. For a moment it hesitated, then moved on. The ticking returned, quiet, human, alive. Claire stood and walked to the door. She looked out at the trees, their leaves beginning to turn gold and rust at the edges. She said she had expected forgiveness to feel brighter than this. I told her brightness fades fast. This kind stays. She smiled just barely and hugged me before leaving. It wasn't a long embrace, but it held the weight of all the years we hadn't shared. When she stepped back, she looked at me the way people look when they finally understand where they came from. Then she walked down the steps, her shoes making soft sounds against the gravel. I watched until the car disappeared through the trees. The cabin felt full when she was gone. I took the letter and read it one more time, then slipped it into the notebook I kept by the clock. I left it open on the table, the ink still fresh enough to catch the light. Outside, the lake was starting to darken with the evening. Somewhere far across the water, a train horn called out once low and fading, like a memory that knew when to stop insisting. I sat on the porch and watched the last of the light settle on the waves. A small boat crossed the distance, its motor humming softly. I thought of Ethan, then somewhere in a city I'd never see, maybe walking along a river that didn't care about the past either. I imagined him hearing that same wind, and for the first time I hoped he had learned not to fight it. Inside, the clock ticked on. The sound felt different now, not a reminder, but a companion, the kind that marks the hours without asking what they're worth. I turned off the lamp, opened the door, and let the cold air move through the room. It lifted the curtains and brushed the edge of the table gentle as breath. I stood there a while, listening to the lake breathe against the shore. The water kept its rhythm. Time kept its promise. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything that didn't need to be said. When the wind quieted, I closed the door and leaned against it. The room was dark except for the faint outline of the clock on the wall, its hands still moving. I let my eyes rest on it, then on the window where a single light flickered across the water and held steady. The night went on, and I let it.